Imagine waking up one day to realize that your surname is tied to the darkest chapter in human history. For Adolf Hitler's immediate family, this was not a hypothetical scenario. It became their reality after the collapse of the Third Reich. As the world learned of the Holocaust and the extent of Nazi atrocities, the name Hitler became a symbol of evil. This placed an extraordinary burden on those who had blood ties to the man responsible for one of history's greatest crimes. Hitler's youngest sister, Paula, is a compelling example. During the Nazi era, she had maintained a low profile, working as a secretary and avoiding any direct involvement in political affairs. However, when World War II ended, the Allies immediately took interest in Hitler's family. Paula was detained by U.S. intelligence officers and questioned extensively about her connection to Adolf. Reports describe her physical resemblance to her brother, a stark reminder of how familial ties could not be escaped. She recounted her childhood with a mixture of affection and strife, describing moments of familial quarrels alongside bonds that, at the time, seemed ordinary. For Paula, reconciling these personal memories with the reality of her brother's crimes was profoundly difficult. After confirming that she had no role in Nazi activities, Paula was released, but faced the monumental task of reclaiming her life in a world that would forever associate her with her brother. To avoid the social stigma and potential persecution, she changed her surname to Wolf, a childhood nickname of Adolf's, and retreated to a small apartment near Berchtesgaden. Living in near seclusion, she survived through savings and occasional help from former associates of the Nazi regime. Her story illustrates the psychological toll of bearing a surname infamous worldwide. In 1959, she consented to a rare interview with British television producer Peter Morley, providing a brief, candid window into her attempts to reconcile with the public perception of her family. Angela Hitler, Adolf's older half-sister, took a slightly different path. Once a close confidant of Adolf, she had served as his housekeeper in the 1920s, yet distanced herself as she grew disillusioned with his personal and political choices. Angela openly criticized Adolf's relationship with Eva Braun and sought a quieter life away from political intrigue. She lived out her final years in Germany, maintaining a low profile until her death in 1949, her story largely forgotten by history. In contrast, Alois Hitler Jr., Adolf's half-brother, attempted to maintain a public presence. After the war, he returned to Germany to rebuild a restaurant business, constantly emphasizing his moral separation from Adolf's actions. Despite his efforts to create a normal life, the shadow of the Hitler name persisted, causing widespread suspicion and scrutiny. Every public interaction, every business decision was subject to analysis, with observers searching for any sign of ideological sympathy. The contrast between Paula's retreat and Alois Jr.'s public attempt at normalcy highlights the complex and often impossible decisions Hitler's immediate family faced: isolation versus engagement, secrecy versus openness. Ultimately, the aftermath of Hitler's crimes imposed not just social stigma, but a deeply personal struggle for identity and moral clarity. Paula's seclusion, Angela's cautious neutrality, and Alois Jr.'s public efforts represent three very different approaches to coping with the profound burden of an infamous family connection. Adolf Hitler's nephew, William Patrick Hitler, presents perhaps the most dramatic example of taking control over this inherited legacy. Born in Liverpool, England, William grew up aware of his connection to a family that would soon become infamous worldwide. As his uncle rose to power in Germany during the 1930s, William initially traveled to Germany, hoping to leverage the family tie for personal and professional advancement. He secured employment at an Opel car factory and tried to integrate himself into the rapidly changing political landscape. However, the initial opportunity quickly soured. William's relationship with Adolf deteriorated, and he realized that being associated with such a figure was dangerous. Threatening to expose family secrets backfired, forcing him to leave Germany permanently. As he descended into war. William relocated to the United States, where he made a remarkable choice. He enlisted in the U.S. Navy in 1944, directly opposing the regime led by his uncle. This was not merely a symbolic gesture, it was a profound moral statement. William chose action over passivity, directly contributing to the fight against the tyranny that bore his family name. William's enlistment was facilitated by a special request from President Franklin D. Roosevelt, highlighting the unusual circumstances surrounding his case. While many of Hitler's relatives withdrew from public life, William embraced the challenge of redefining his identity. He actively sought to demonstrate his moral separation from his uncle, and his military service became a means to achieve this. After the war, William faced the complex task of rebuilding his life in America. In 1947, he married Phyllis Jean Jacques, changed his surname to Stuart Houston, and settled in Long Island, New York. There, he lived as a quiet civilian, rarely speaking about his familial ties. To the outside world, he was simply a war veteran, unconnected to the notorious dictator of Nazi Germany. Yet the shadow of his lineage influenced every choice he made, from career paths to personal relationships and even the upbringing of his children. William Patrick Hitler's story demonstrates the extraordinary lengths to which one could go to reject a tainted legacy. Unlike his siblings or extended family, he chose action over retreat, using both moral courage and strategic relocation to carve out a life independent of the infamy associated with the Hitler name. Even after adopting new names and moving across continents, Hitler's relatives faced significant psychological challenges. The surname Hitler was more than a name. It was a burden that shaped personal identity, social interactions, and professional opportunities. Even distant cousins or minor descendants could feel the stigma, often fearing exposure and social ostracism. Many relatives chose total anonymity. For instance, Peter Raubel and Heiner Hockager, descendants of Hitler's cousins, deliberately pursued private careers in engineering and other inconspicuously
professions. They avoided media attention and limited social interactions to protect themselves from the potential backlash of a notorious ancestry. Their experiences highlight the interplay of secrecy, fear, and survival instincts in the lives of those bearing a problematic family legacy. The psychological toll of being related to a figure like Adolf Hitler cannot be overstated. Relatives frequently grappled with guilt and shame despite having no involvement in Nazi crimes. Questions of moral responsibility haunted them. What did it mean to be connected by blood to someone whose actions shaped the course of history? Some even made decisions to prevent the continuation of their lineage, believing that ending their family line could symbolically break ties with the past. The tension between public perception and personal identity was a constant source of stress. Some relatives struggled to assert individuality, while others sought to erase all traces of their connection to Hitler. In both cases, the weight of history shaped choices and behaviors, demonstrating how generational trauma extends far beyond those directly involved in historical events. The most extreme example of distancing from Hitler's lineage comes from the Stuart Houston brothers, descendants of William Patrick Hitler. These men chose not to have children, effectively ending Adolf Hitler's bloodline. Raised in post-war America, the brothers deliberately avoided public attention and crafted lives completely removed from their infamous ancestry. Their decision was both practical and symbolic. By refusing to continue the family line, they rejected the legacy of infamy and attempted to sever any future connection to the atrocities committed by their great-uncle. The psychological burden of living in the shadow of Hitler's crimes influenced their identity and life decisions, underscoring the profound impact of historical legacy on individual choice. The story of Hitler's relatives offers insights into how families cope with extreme stigma. From secrecy and isolation to public rejection of a legacy, these individuals exemplify the struggle between inherited identity and moral responsibility. The Stuart Houston brothers' choice to end the family line serves as a striking reminder of the long-lasting consequences of historical events, showing how the past can continue to shape decisions even decades later.
Finally, if you found these stories of courage, resilience, and moral reckoning fascinating, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell to explore more hidden histories from World War II.